The rain had been steady for 2 days, an endless, quiet percussion that blurred neon into soft streams and made puddles of the city's neon signs. Hotels exist where lives pause. Travelers spend an hour, a night, or a week inside a room someone else has slept in, and then they leave. We carry our little rituals with us when we travel, the way we tuck a wallet into a drawer, the order we make breakfast, the route we take to the lobby, and sometimes those rituals meet something else that has already been living there, a memory, a mark, the slow habit of attention. Tonight, I'll tell you 4 true stories. For people who checked into ordinary hotels and found something in a room that would not let them leave as easily as they thought. These are reconstructions from interviews, messages, and forum threads. They are told in a documentary voice, measured, precise, and attentive to detail. If you've ever slept in a room and felt watched by the walls themselves, one of these stories may begin to explain why. Turn your lights down. Put the headphones in. Listen for small noises, a radiator sighing, a distant elevator chime. Sometimes the quiet is the loudest thing. Story 1, Room 317, The Water Footprints. Ethan was a man who had stopped thinking of hotels as places so much as stopovers. For a decade he'd been a road consultant, flights, trains, rental cars, transient rooms stacked into a life measured by receipts. On a grey, rain-smudged Tuesday he pulled into the city, late and tired, and chose the Meridian because it was cheap and close to the conference site. The lobby smelled faintly of lemon polish and the wallpaper had a repeating pattern that made him dizzy. At the front desk a clerk who seemed older than the building pushed a brass key across to him without much ceremony. 3rd floor. End of the hall. Room 317 faced an inner shaft, a tube between 2 buildings where light went to die. Ethan liked the silence. He unpacked, showered, and thought about work for a while in the low glow of the bedside lamp. That's when he noticed the prints. Small, bare, wet, the arches of tiny feet pressed in a path from the window to the bed, circling the nightstand like somebody walking a small, deliberate route. The prints were odd for a hotel at 2 in the morning. Ethan blamed the staff, a child of a previous guest, a prank. He rubbed at the carpet with a shoe and the marks smudged, then reappeared as if the fibers had remembered exactly where pressure had been applied. At 2:13 a.m., the bedside phone rang. There was no number, only the hollow sound of breathing and then the slow sound of a children's lullaby, the tune warped, as though played on a damaged music box. No voice, just that lullaby and a breath. Ethan wrapped the phone in a towel and checked the hallway. The corridor was still. The exit sign blinked. The footprint pattern on the carpet had shifted while he'd been gone. Now the tiny prints formed a ring around the lamp on the nightstand, pointing inward, attentive. He called the front desk. The clerk listened politely and promised to send someone to check surveillance footage. The officers who arrived later were bureaucratic and competent. They took photos, measured prints, bagged evidence. The security cameras in the corridor presented nothing unusual: cleaning staff, a delivery at 9 p.m., but the cameras that should have shown the hallway around 2 to 2:20 a.m. had a 6-minute gap, exactly 6 minutes of dead, granular static. The technicians scratched their heads. The staff chalked it up to a power glitch. Ethan went home with a cardboard box tucked with his clothes and an aftertaste of something like abandonment. Weeks later, a neighborhood paper mentioned a child reported missing in a neighboring county on a rainy night months earlier. Details blurred as investigators compared times and witnesses. Was there a missing child? Was the child ever found? Papers left pages blank and then moved on. Ethan kept the idea of the footprints like a splinter under his skin. He began to notice other small things in life that suggested attention. A toy left on his stoop once when he came home late, a lullaby that seemed to slip into his phone's blank audio files. The Meridian never issued a public statement. The clerk kept making change. Someone else always checked into 317 the following week, lights on, curtains closed, the radiator sighing. What did those prints mean? Someone suggested an elaborate prank. Someone else suggested grief lodged in architecture. In the night, when the radiator clicked, Ethan still sometimes imagined the patter of small wet feet walking a measured route in the dark, mapping the space around the bed. Story 2, Room 412, The Doll on the Pillow. Rachel booked the courtlay because she liked old things, carved banisters, sconces with soft bulbs, and bedspreads that smelled faintly of lavender. The manor had been converted into guest rooms and poured its personality into each space. Mismatched chairs, brass trinkets, a courtyard where rain made small silver moons in the stone. The first evening she found a porcelain doll sitting on the dresser, its face hairline cracked, lips painted a tired red. It felt quaint until she reached for the drain plug while running a bath and discovered, tangled in the chain, a small child's ribbon, faded, knotted in that careful way a parent ties a bow. She tucked it into her wallet in a mood that mixed amusement and a faint prickling unease. At 3 in the morning, she woke to the sound of tiny steps skittering in the wooden floors above, a light, cadenced tapping that could have been a raccoon or the old pipes. The sound came directly over the bed, a measured shuffle and then a slow, uneasy creak. She switched on the lamp. The doll she had admired minutes before was now on the pillow, turned to face her. The ribbon was no longer in her wallet. When she took the doll to the desk in the morning, the clerk produced a bland face. "We don't place objects in rooms," he said. The supervisor checked the surveillance from outside the wing. There was a precise, awkward minute of interference at 3:06 a.m., a strip of footage that stuttered, lost definition, and returned as if a moment had been edited out. After that edits, the footage resumed with the doll in place, no visible hand having carried it across the frame. There were stories tied to the manor, an old family rumor of a missing child, a nanny who had walked away in the rain one autumn, a fire in the back wing when the building was still a private estate. Museums love to sell charm, history loves to sell sorrow. Rachel left with the ribbon folded into an envelope and a sense that the room had been holding attention for a long time. Later, she found posts on community boards from other guests: doll on my pillow, crib listening at 2 a.m., music box that no one wound. For the staff, these moments were enough of a nuisance to log but not enough to shutter the hotel. For guests like Rachel, those small tokens rearranged trust. For a day or two after, she checked her phone for quiet recordings of lullabies she never made. Story 3: The ballet shoe on the threshold. Tom and Lisa expected indulgence when they booked a weekend at the Aldridge Chandeliers valet service, a concierge who seemed like a character out of another era. Anniversary dinners and tongues loosened by wine, romance in small gestures. They did not expect to be chosen. On their second night, the mirror in the bathroom fogged after a hot shower, and when Tom wiped the condensation away, one word remained, written from the inside out: stay. They laughed at it, the kind of nervous laughter that moves you from uneasy to amused. When they came back from the hotel bar, a small ballet slipper lay on the threshold, dampened from the hallway humidity. It was a child's shoe, tiny and worn, the ribbon frayed at the edges. The corridor when Tom cracked the door was empty. The next morning, a photograph they had taken of the two of them at dinner showed, in the reflection behind them, a pale face at a window, head tilted, a shape they both swore they had not noticed at the time. The Aldridge had a history: a fire in a service corridor years earlier, a dancer from the neighborhood who had trained until dawn and who had died in a small accident on the very staircase the staff used to bring linens. Staff would tell you these things with a weary tenderness, as if explaining a pet's illness. The manager, when Tom and Lisa asked, admitted that some guests had reported hearing a dancer's music coming up from the back stairwell, soft measures and the click of a toe. Guests sometimes returned missing a shoe from the dresser. Some staff hung a small charm over the stairwell's entrance, the sort of gesture intended to bring both comfort and finality. Tom and Lisa left the hotel that night. They later found an entry in an old hotel ledger for a trainee named Elise, a name underlined in the margins, followed by faded notes about a recital. They did not want explanation, they wanted to not be chosen again. The image of the little slipper haunted them for weeks. Friends joked, then fell quiet when they described waking up with the faint imprint of a small foot on their own bedroom carpet. The Aldridge continued to host galas and weddings. The slipper found its way into a gossip column one season, like a small superstition that made better reading than the stock market. Story 4: Nocturne House, the Pianola Letters. Milo traveled the circuit of bars and small theaters, always rotating hotels depending on where the gig took him. He loved places with personality: chipped paint, a free piano, a staff who'd seen 1,000 nights. Nocturne House fit him like a glove: a lobby piano, creaky stairs, and a list of regulars who liked late sets. After a show, he came back to find a note under his door: "We watched the show tonight. Thank you." He thought of a fan who had lingered too long. Next night, another slip. "We like the way you bend the last phrase." The notes continued, each one small and careful with observation. They were flattering at first, then unsettling. They knew what he ordered at breakfast, which song he reserved as a personal thing for the end of the set, what he hummed when he fell asleep. Then the pianola started. The mechanical roll in the lobby played at night, turning with a sound the building absorbed. A slow, heavy melody that might have been in a noir movie, played slightly out of tune. Milo watched the roll closely on a midday inspection. Someone had cut and taped its perforated paper with the neatness of a librarian and arranged the holes into a rhythm that read like a coded phrase. On the bench, someone had pinned a scrap with the hotel logo and 3 words, "We learn your rhythm." He left a cheap recorder outside his door one night. At 1:12 a.m., the recorder had captured not a ghostly voice but a pattern: careful feet pacing the corridor, a scraping sound at the base of the door, the sound of paper being folded and slid under. The hallway camera showed a light pass at 1:11 a.m., a smear like a person moving quickly, then the shadow of a small figure crossing, steps nimble, and then nothing. The staff shrugged. "We get dedicated admirers." But the notes sometimes contained details not easily learned: the tune he practiced for months, the title of a lullaby he'd written and not published. Milo left that hotel with a jar of notes. Some he burned, some he kept. Music, he realized, can be an instrument of intimacy and of possession. When someone knows the intangible parts of you, the pauses, the personal cues, it can feel like an honor and like an invasion. 4 months afterward, he woke to the taste of old dust in his mouth and the aftersound of the pianola, a melody rearranged so that it was recognizably his and, at the same time, not his at all. These 4 stories are not dramatic cases that end with a single arrest or an exorcism. They are slow ink troubles, blank strips of footage, anonymous notes, small objects placed on pillows and thresholds. Police reports existed, and sometimes a missing person or an unattended hazard would be found in municipal records, but most of what made the night strange was attention itself, persistent, patient, domestic. Online communities collected artifacts, photos of ballet shoes, scans of yellowed notes, sound clips of lullabies hummed on loop. People shared rituals that worked for them: photograph the object, leave it in place, call the desk, save the footage. Some reported being treated kindly by staff who wanted to keep the hotel open and their revenue steady. Others found staff who were strange in their own right, offering explanations as if parts of the building had always been this way. For the people who lived through these nights, life changed quietly. Ethan avoided that highway exit for months. Rachel never stayed on the 2nd floor of an old manor again. Tom and Lisa refused hotel mirrors for a while, sleeping with the bathroom door closed. Milo practiced in bright practice rooms where no piano could pull a secret phrase out of the air. They adopted rituals: lights left on, door wedges, cameras on tripods. These small praxes are both armor and labor, a daily weight that makes the world feel narrower and safer at once. There are simpler explanations, certainly. Architecture remembers. Old pipes, animals in attics, poor wiring, all of these can make sounds that read like attention. Human minds are pattern machines, excellent at turning a scatter of cues into a story. But there are also things that archive small behaviors and return them like letters: stray notes, objects arranged with the precision of ritual, gaps of footage that shouldn't be. When you see a child's shoe arranged like an offering or a doll turned to look at you, something has been placed deliberately in your path.